The old woman's belongings were laid out on folding tables, draped in white sheets. John navigated the makeshift aisles, his eyes scanning for treasures amidst the mundane. The auctioneer called out the next item. John hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand, a sense of purpose settling over him. John's fingers danced over the guitar strings, summoning a cascade of chords that resonated through his music room. He closed his eyes, losing himself in the music, unaware of the passage of time. Days turned into weeks, each day filled with the music of the old guitar. John found himself drawn to the instrument, compelled to unlock its secrets and explore its full potential. One evening, as John sat down to play, he discovered a small compartment hidden beneath the guitar's bridge. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a small, leather-bound notebook. The antique clock chimed midnight, its resonant tones swallowed by the oppressive silence of the house. John lay in bed, his eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. John started avoiding the music room, the once cherished space, now a source of unease. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sensation of unseen eyes following his every move. John couldn't resist the pull of the guitar any longer. He had to know the truth. John stopped playing. Eleanor's shimmering form seemed to waver, her outline blurring at the edges. Mrs. Henderson, it turned out, was a treasure trove of local history and lore. After listening to John's tale of the haunted guitar and his unsuccessful search for its previous owner, she leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression on her face. Eleanor, she mused, tapping a finger on her chin. That name rings a bell. I believe there were stories, local legends, you know, about a woman named Eleanor who lived in the area many years ago. John's interest piqued. Legends? What kind of legend? Mrs. Henderson hesitated, her gaze drifting toward the ceiling as if lost in thought. Well, some say Eleanor was a talented musician, a gifted guitarist. She poured her heart and soul into her music, but she was also a recluse, rarely leaving her home. She paused, her eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. They say she was heartbroken, you see, lost her one true love in the war, never quite recovered from the grief. John leaned forward, captivated by her story. This Eleanor was beginning to sound familiar, her tale echoing the melancholy he had sensed in the music he had played from her songbook. Mrs. Henderson continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Some folks around here believe her spirit never truly left this town. They say her music still lingers in the air, especially on quiet nights when the wind is just right. She pointed John towards a collection of local history books, her finger tracing the spines until she found the one she was looking for. This might have something. It's a compilation of stories and anecdotes from the town's early days. Section 3, The Music Teacher. John delved into the local history book, his heart pounding with anticipation. He skimmed through tales of early settlers, searching for any mention of Eleanor. Finally, he found it, a small paragraph in the town's cultural history. Eleanor Vance, a renowned music teacher, captivated audiences with her soulful guitar playing in the early 1900s. Her students traveled from miles around to learn from her, but tragedy struck when her fiancé, a young soldier named William, was killed in action during the Great War. Heartbroken, Eleanor withdrew from public life, her music silenced by grief. She lived out her days in quiet solitude, her only solace the memories of her lost love. John's fingers trembled as he read the words, his mind racing. Eleanor Vance. The name resonated with a chilling familiarity. He had found her, the ghost in his guitar. The book mentioned that Eleanor had lived in a rambling Victorian house on the outskirts of town. Armed with this new information, John set out to find the place where Eleanor had lived. As he drove, the image of Eleanor's face burned in his mind. He thought of her tragic story, the heartbroken music teacher seeking solace in her art. A wave of sadness washed over him, followed by a strange sense of responsibility. He had to help her find peace, to silence the mournful melodies that echoed through his life. The house was as imposing as he had imagined it, a 3-story Victorian mansion with a wraparound porch and a turret. The paint was peeling, the once vibrant colors now faded to a ghostly gray. The yard was overgrown, the remnants of a once beautiful garden now choked with weeds. John stepped out of his car, a shiver running down his spine. An oppressive silence hung in the air, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant barking of a dog. He walked toward the house, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. As he reached the porch steps, he noticed something he hadn't seen before, a faded sign half hidden by overgrown ivy. He brushed away the leaves, revealing the words, Eleanor's School of Music. John stood before the imposing Victorian mansion, a shiver snaking down his spine despite the warmth of the afternoon sun. The faded sign, Eleanor's School of Music, whispered of a vibrant past, now shrouded in an unsettling silence. The house seemed to exude a melancholic aura, a tangible sadness that clung to its time-worn facade. He imagined young students, their faces alight with the joy of music, climbing these very steps, their laughter echoing through the halls. Now only the rustling of leaves and the distant caw of a crow disturbed the quiet. Taking a deep breath, he stepped across the threshold, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight. The air inside was stale and heavy, with a scent of decay, a musty perfume of forgotten memories. Dust motes danced in the weak rays of sunlight that filtered through grimy windows, illuminating the faded grandeur of the house. He could almost hear the echo of Eleanor's music, the mournful strains of a soul seeking solace. He wandered through the darkened rooms, each one a testament to a life lived and a love lost. A grand piano, its keys yellowed with age, dominated the parlor, Sheet music lay scattered on the floor. The ink faded, but the melodies still visible to his searching gaze. He brushed his fingers against the worn velvet of an armchair, picturing Eleanor sitting there, her guitar cradled in her arms, her voice a whisper of lost dreams. Ascending the grand staircase, its banister coated in a thick layer of dust, he reached the second floor. A doorway at the end of the hall stood slightly ajar, beckoning him forward. He pushed it open, his heart pounding in his chest, and stepped inside. The room was bathed in an ethereal glow, the source of which John couldn't quite place. Dust motes danced in the luminous air, swirling like miniature stars in a celestial ballet. In the center of the room stood Eleanor, her translucent form shimmering. She held her guitar, its wood gleaming with an otherworldly light. John stood mesmerized, his fear replaced by a strange sense of awe. Eleanor turned to him, her features etched with profound sadness. He understood now that she didn't mean to frighten him. She was trapped, tethered to the mortal realm by her grief and her music. Taking a hesitant step forward, he lifted his own guitar. He began to play, the notes filling the room with a melancholic melody. To his astonishment, Eleanor began to play alongside him. The music swelled, blending together in a haunting duet. The oppressive sadness began to lift, replaced by a sense of peace. Eleanor's form grew brighter, the sadness in her eyes giving way to a glimmer of hope. The final chords of the haunted guitar resonated in the stillness of the room, the sound fading into a soft, melancholic echo. John lowered his instrument, his gaze fixed on Eleanor. The ethereal glow that had surrounded her had intensified, her form now almost blindingly bright. The sadness that had once clouded her features had vanished, replaced by a serene smile that illuminated her face like a sunrise. She nodded at John, a silent thank you passing between them. Then, with a gentle sigh, she began to fade. The light around her intensified for a heartbeat, then winked out, leaving behind only the echo of her presence and the lingering scent of lavender. John stood in the silence, his heart heavy yet strangely light. He sensed that Eleanor was finally at peace, her spirit freed from the bonds of grief, and her music no longer a mournful echo of what had been lost. He had helped her find her way home, a melody of empathy bridging the gap between the living and the dead. He left the house, the weight of its sorrow lifted. As he drove away, the setting sun cast long shadows across the road, painting the landscape in hues of orange and purple. He glanced back at the Victorian mansion, its silhouette stark against the dying light. It seemed peaceful now, its secrets laid to rest. John knew he would never forget his encounter with Eleanor and her haunted guitar. It had been a harrowing experience, a chilling journey into the heart of grief and loss. But it had also been a profound one, a reminder that even in the face of death, music had the power to heal, to connect, and to set us free.